Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. To the Honorable Professor Dr. Insinyur Muhammad Anis M.Med as the Rector of Universitas Indonesia. To the Honorable Professor Dr. Eko Prasojo, Magister Rerum Budikarum as the Dean of the Faculty of Administrative Science, Universitas Indonesia. To the Honorable Professor Dr. Haula Rosliana, MSc, as the Vice Dean of Academic and Research in Faculty of Administrative Science, Universitas Indonesia. To the Honorable Dr. Retno Kusuma Stuti, MSc, as the Vice Dean of Human Resource, Finance and Administration at Faculty of Administration Science, Universitas Indonesia. To the Honorable Professor Dr. Ferdinand Saragi, as the Chairman of the Board of Professors, Faculty of Administrative Science, Universitas Indonesia. And to the Honorable Dr. Setiawan Wangsaatmaja, as the Minister Deputy of Government Personnel Management, Ministry of Administrative and Bureaucracy Reform. And of course, to all ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the International Conference on Administrative Science, Policy and Governance Studies. The main objective of this conference is to discuss and debate about the recent trends in administrative science issues that will be included in the parallel sessions under 3 streams. The first stream is the public sector reform, policy, and innovation in changing the state-market-society relations. The second stream is strategic governance and organizational readiness towards the regional cooperation. And the third stream is in promoting adaptable fiscal policy towards sustainable development in the dynamic public, private, and society relations. This conference will be held in 2 days, including today and tomorrow. We have 2 plenary sessions as well as the parallel sessions. We would like to inform you that we have our official application, ICAS-PGS, which can be downloaded from the Google Play Store. But we would like to inform that we are very sorry that this application will only be downloaded from the Android. However, we are announcing that the program book is available on the flash drive USB on the conference kit. Now, without further ado, let us first sing Indonesia Raya, and for all participants, we would like to invite you to all please stand up. Thank you. ladies and gentlemen, and we would like to please let you go back to your seat. Thank you. And now we are moving to the opening ceremony. For the first welcome speech will be delivered from Rector of Universitas Indonesia to Professor Dr. Insinyur Muhammad Anis M. Please welcome to the stage.
Welcome you all to the first International Conference on Administrative Science, Policy and Government Studies, or ICAS-PGS 2017, held by the Fakultas of Administrative Science, Universitas Indonesia. The theme of this event, promoting collaborative governance in dynamic public-private society relations to ensure the achievement of sustainable development goals, reflects the factual challenges that faced by any countries because of political instability caused by world constellation, which few Asian countries play more important roles. Consequently, public administration plays an important role in enhancing public trust and good governance has become fashionable in many countries. Moreover, regional cooperations are seen as strategic in the effort amongst countries with similar proximity, whereby economic and political alliances are nurtured. In economic sense, the collaboration is aimed at empowering the country's growth through the exercise of opposite competition. In the course of time, social and cultural dimension contribute to the amelioration of countries' engagement to develop regional business progress. The organization need to outline strategies to realize commitment and achieve change efficacy. So in this conference provides a transnational platform in which various latest issues on public, private and society relations will be presented and discussed. Universitas Indonesia realizes that research is one of the most fundamental foundations in academic institutions. Therefore, we proudly support this event in order to boost research culture among scholars both in national and international levels. We have conducted various methods to increase our research productivity. The result can be observed in the increasing number of publications by Universitas Indonesia scholars, and nevertheless, the main goal of our research is to contribute to better society and advancement of our nation. I expect this conference will facilitate the discussion as well as the debate between academics, policymakers, researchers, professional and other related stakeholders on a number of topics presented. It is also expected to be a forum to provide practical solutions for public and private sectors, various administrative challenges. Thank you for all the committee for having this event well. Hopefully, we will sustain sustain in upcoming years. We wish all of you have rewarding and fruitful discussion, also a wonderful and pleasant stay in Depok. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Insinyur Muhammad Anis M. as the Rector of Universitas Indonesia for the welcoming speech. And next, we would like to welcome Professor Dr. Eko Prastojo, Magister Rerum Putih Kanun, as Dean of Faculty of Administrative Science, Universitas Indonesia, for the welcome speech. To Professor Eko, please welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Rector Universitas Indonesia, Professor Dr. Muhammad Anis, Honorable Chair of Board of Professor, Fakultas Ilmu Administrasi, Professor Saragi, Honorable Deputy of Ministry of Administrative Reform, Dr. Insinyur Setiawan Konsat Maja, respected speakers and lecturers of the Faculty of Administrative Science, Professor Evan Berman, my best friend, Professor Unsut Choi, also my best friend, Dr. Til Koracitra, also my best friend. Welcome to this conference. Board of APA, Board of IAPA, IAB, and FTA, respected participants, our colleagues from the Faculty of Administrative Science, organizing committee, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Faculty of Administrative Science, University of Indonesia, allow me to welcome to all of you to the first International Conference on Administrative Science, Policy and Governance Studies. Thank you for the opportunity given to me to say a few words at the beginning of these important milestones to take collaborative governance one step further into concrete implementations towards Sustainable Development Goals 2030. This conference is one of several our faculty initiative to bring academicians and scholars knowledge to actions, increasing evidence-based policy and sustainably advocating knowledge-based bureaucracy. The main objective of this conference is to discuss and debate the recent trends in administrative science on a range of issues such as civil servant competence enhancement, public service delivery improvement, for sound social policy, cultural marketing, financial governance, entrepreneurship, transformation adaptive, tax policy and regulations, accountability and transparency on tax collections and public expenditure, and enhancing policy capacity as well as IT-based tax administrations. Critical prerequisite to achieve SDGs 2030 is global governance. It is governance that fully subscribes to open, transparent, accountable and adaptive governance principles. The collaborative governance plays a significant role in the growth of citizen welfare in this borderless world. We take the responsibility to contributing in promoting collaborative governance in dynamic public-private society relations. It is collaborative governance that increases public, private and society involvement, strengthens international cooperation, advances economic development and promotes effective efficient government, which will lead to attainment of SDGs goals 2030. From the 2 days conference, I would like to emphasize, first, I hope that through this forum, ideas and contacts will be exchanged, networks will be expanded, collaboration will be solidified. Second, I hope that this conference will give you a clue on who and what to ask and where to go anytime you want to embark on a new initiative on collaborative governance. The third, our homework to drive further collaborative governance in our respective community, country, and region shall never be on one-man show undertaking. Collaborative governance is literally about making things happen in the spirit of partnership between countries, civil societies, private sector, youth, academia, development partners, and the media. Ideas and innovation really do come from anywhere, anyone in this conference. I don't think that these ideas and innovation will stop here and merely as scientific activities. We have to do more in practice to promote collaborative governance. I don't think that these ideas and innovation will stop here and merely as scientific publications, but also we have to do more under evidence-based policy. We know exactly, and I believe all speakers and participants here would conclude that the journey towards better collaborative governance requires what I call the 4 C's: conceptions, commitment, continuance, and co-partnerships. Your participation and contribution in this conference signifies our common interest in promoting the values of collaborative governance and consolidating the achievement of SDGs. I am confident that through sharing and exchanging views and experiences, this conference will contribute positively to the attainment of SDGs 2030. SDGs 2030 will be achieved and self-sustained if it is a homegrown, genuine process and involving public, private, and society. I strongly believe that collaborative governance is prerequisite to successful development of our countries. Collaborative governance will also serve as the main component in the implementation of Sustainable Development Goals agenda. What we discussed during the conference is very important. It will contribute to the people's life in Indonesia, Asia, and the rest of the world. Last, if there is one thing that we learned most from the organization of this conference is that partnership is the way. The Faculty of Administrative Science, University of Indonesia is grateful to have great partners, fellow academia and universities, public sectors, private sectors, society and development partners and students working together in promoting collaborative governance. For that, I sincerely thank each and every one of you here who contributing and participating for our joint efforts in advocating collaborative governance as prerequisite for the success and smooth implementation of SDGs 2030. And I hope that we can find the ASEAN model, the ASEAN ways of public administrations, digitalization and tax administration from this conference. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
We would like to please Professor Eko and Professor Dr. Insinyur Muhammad Anis M. to please welcome to the stage again for Professor Muhammad Anis will be given an appreciation gift from Professor Eko. Please welcome to the stage. Thank you very much. And now, moving on to the next session, we would like to have a group photo. We will have the first plenary session, and we are very sorry that for the session, Dr. Setiawan Masatmaja, Administrative Chief, the Government and Personal Engagement, Ministry of Administrative and Bureaucracy Reform, will be joining us in a later moment because currently he's having a press conference. So for our moderator, please welcome Dr. Ruhiyato Sumarwono as the Executive Director of Universitas Indonesia Center for Study of Governance and Administrative Reform Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. This morning we are very fortunate. We will have two seasoned, well-knowledgeable speakers this morning. One is Professor Jim Sok Choi. Professor Jim Sok Choi is a senior professor at the University. Now he is a director for international cooperation in the Korean universities, and also President of KAPA, Korea Association of Public Administration. Okay, Professor Jung Sok Choi, please come into the stage. Our first speaker, Dr. Setiawan, is already here. Dr. Setiawan Satmaja is the Deputy Minister for Human Resources for Civil Service in the Ministry of State Apparatus and Empowerment and Bureaucratic Reform. Please welcome Dr. Setiawan Satmaja. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, and conference participants, today we will have again two speakers. Professor Dr. Iman will presenting the harnessing national competitiveness through administrative reform, the Indonesian way. That's supposed to be presented by the minister himself. Unfortunately, the minister must conducting religious travel to the Makkah. Okay, every speaker will giving their presentation maybe about 20-25 minutes. After that, we will have discussion. Without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Setiawan Satmaja to give this presentation. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much to the moderator. Probably is my best friend. Okay. We have around 9.5 months during our what we call it Chandra di Muka. I don't know in English. In Lemhanas, and thank you very much for inviting me. And ladies and gentlemen, actually Pamukri will join us here, but I apologize that he could not join now because he is, as Parvez mentioned, that he is still in Makkah, and he wanted me to come here. And of course, I hope that you can also join with me actually here. And distinguished expert, ladies and gentlemen, today, as requested by the organizer, I will discuss the topic of harnessing national competitiveness through administrative reform. I would like to focus our discussion on developing national competitiveness through collaborative government. Certainly, I will discuss administrative reform in Indonesia, which are now taking place as well. Ladies and gentlemen, the responsibility of developing national competitiveness does not exclusively lies on the government itself, yet on the all stakeholders. And government has to collaborate with citizens as individual, society, and private sectors. The balance of their role, respectively, is very important for the success of national competitiveness improvement. Too much power on government will make government to abuse power for their leaders' advantages, and hence the government will tend to corrupt. When the political party who representing the society also play the dominant power, then there will be authoritarian government, one single party run the government. If the private sectors has more influence on power, then there will be excessive use of the public goods by the private sector, which is not good for economy. Therefore, we need collaborative governance. The model has been developed in the last decade, as mentioned on Chris Ansel and also Alison Judge of the University of California, Berkeley. To implement collaborative governance, at least we have three elements. First, there should be a forum as a place for the process of collaboration. In this matter, government by means of their ministries or other government institutions that carry out related specific tasks and functions has to initiate creating such this forum. Second, there should be active participants from all stakeholders. The participants should be truly representative of stakeholders who has commitment to collaborate for the benefit of society. Third, there should be a clear focus of collaboration. The focus could be on policy formulation or specific activity for resulting output needed by society. It is not easy to implement collaborative governance. There are some important factors that become prerequisite for the best implementation of collaboration government. These are: 1. Leadership. Leadership becomes the most important factor for implementing the fruitfulness collaborative government. Leaders, usually government leaders, should practice facilitative leadership that support the collaboration among all components. According to Nonaka and Hirotaka, in their article on Harvard Business Review entitled Wise Leader, there are 6 criteria to become a wise leader that could facilitate collaboration in the organization. 1. Wise leader can judge goodness. 2. Wise leader can grasp the essence. 3. Wise leader create shared context. 4. Wise leaders communicate the essence. 5. Wise leaders exercise political power. And 6. Wise leaders foster practical wisdom in others. And the second is commitment. Commitment is the second factor that is important to implement collaborative governance. It has to be started from the top leaders and spread out to other leaders in all levels below the finally reaching the individual level in organization. Commitment has to be distributed to the stakeholders, including informal society, society leaders, private sectors, and citizens. When commitment is growing among the collaborators, then the culture of collaboration will be stronger. The third, quality of bureaucracy. Government has an important role to facilitate the collaboration. If the government is weak, then there will be no collaboration at all. Therefore, bureaucracy should be more creative, innovative, and communicative in order to respond to the actual needs of society. 4. Learning culture. The ability of all actors involved in collaboration to learn is also playing an important role. When all people have a good will to learn and to share their knowledge and experience for the benefit of society, then the culture of learning will internalize in society. This situation is good for creating creative and innovative society. Ladies and gentlemen, the process of collaboration basically will start from the face-to-face dialogue. In our practice, we have what we call, I think in Indonesia it's very popular, we call it belusukan. In this term, government leaders have to seek information, to listen, to observe, to feel, and to talk directly to the stakeholders. These dialogues then have to be followed by the more technical dialogue facilitated by the government institution involving all related stakeholders. The good will all stakeholders will gain the commitment to collaborate. When the commitment in place, then the dialogue will be more open to share experience and knowledge, so that it creates common perception on the matter of discussion. All the participants will feel they trust each other. Again, the role of the government is very important to facilitate and balance the discussion. Communication with informal leader, religion leader, and society leader become a key to reach final decision. The process will continue to the step where all participants begin to develop their commitment to the collaboration process. All participants will have the feeling and ownership and responsibility the matter discussed, as the shared understanding among the participants will also go up. The process of collaboration will finally create output of the action plan that would be the policy recommendation, problem solving, establishing or creating activity or other things for the resulting outcome that benefit for the society. Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned before, the government plays the most important role in developing collaborative government. Therefore, we need strong government that always improve its capability to respond to the needs of society. In our term, the government continuous improvement is done through administrative reforms. In Indonesia context, we use the term bureaucratic reform. We have been starting bureaucratic reform in 2008, and until now we have done a lot of things and results. In this part, I will discuss bureaucratic reform that will have done to the date. In our approach, bureaucratic reform has the big target, which are the clean and accountable government, the effective and efficient government, and the government that could provide the better quality and service to public. For achieving this target, we have done several strategic actions that consist of 1. Improving the implementation of performance management. In implementing the collaborative governance, we need the result-oriented management. In practice, we face some problems, including, in many cases, midterm government plan, in ministries, government institutions, and local government are not result-oriented. Inefficient occur as a result of bad midterm planning, and unaccountable result, and misuse of budget, and finally corruption. The action taken to overcome this problem involve integrating planning system, budgeting system, and performance data system into one system. Collaboration of Ministry of Finance, Ministry of National Development Planning, and Ministry of Administrative Reform. Strengthening the implementation of performance-based management in public sector to promote result-oriented government. Developing e-performance budgeting to support the implementation of performance-based management, and imposing the accountability of government. Second, the structuring government institution organization. The condition of this area involve too many non-structural organizations in government that overlap their function with ministries. The change on strategic plan priority and the need to implement the issue strategic. The action for this area involve the simplification of the government organization through dismissal of some government institutions, streamline the organization structure, and combining organization. Since 2004 and 2014, there are 23 non-structural organizations were dissolved. 5 organizations were transformed into the new organization, and 3 organizations were established to function on specific strategic issues. The third, implementation of e-government. The common problem in development e-government includes most of government institutions have extensive IT systems developed over the years, but they are still not efficient. There is growing demand from the public for faster, cheaper, transparent, and IT-oriented service from government. Lack of data validity and disintegrated government information system. The proposed solution for this problem involves the use of the best practice of general application software to other government institutions, strengthening the IT policy and integrated IT infrastructure development. The fourth, improving civil service. Civil service is the most important part of the government. When government does not have a good quality of civil service, then government will not produce good quality of policy and services. However, we have been facing of human resource management that involve bad recruitment system, spoil system practices, and quality of bureaucracy is low, and distribution of civil service is not balanced with the need. The action taken for this problem involved enactment the civil service law in 2014, and also with the government regulation number 11 in 2017, and the implementation of IT-based recruitment system, and as we call it, computer-assisted tests, more transparent, accountable, and systematic. The implementation of open promotion system and the improvement of pension system. Fifth, improvement the quality of public services. The problem that usually occur of public services involve lot of library practice of the government services, expensive and take long time, and also careless. Action taken for this problem involve encouraging innovation in public sectors and integrating the national complaint handling system and developing and establishing public service more. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me share one of the priority programs of the Ministry of Administration Reform in this year. I am very happy to inform you that after the moratorium since 2015, I think 3 years ago, this year we started with the recruitment for civil service. As you can see here in the slide, the total formation that we opened to the public is around 37,000. And from this formation, actually we have 3 categorized. First, around 1,800. This proposed to be for the civil service candidate, especially from the best, I think the best student from the university. And then around 166, the candidate from disability, and around 190, the candidate from the young and youth from Papua and West Papua. And of course, next slide. This is the situation, the atmosphere that our recruitment system, especially during tests, by using the computer, as we call it, computer-assisted test. This happened this year, and as we can see the date, 12 September 2017. All the candidates must be using the computer, and the result real time. They can see their result as the real time. So there are no transactions in between. Next. This is the situation before 2014, the picture, in the left picture. And after 2014, we reformed the recruitment system to be that one. The picture, the left one. Next. So, at the time, during paper-based test, we should handle a lot of paper, something like that. And right now, the result, as we can see directly, as the real time, so all the candidates can see whether they pass the passing grade or not. Next. Okay, that is the last slide for me, and I would like to thank to all of you for the attention. Hatur nuhun, terima kasih, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Iman Setiawan, with his comprehensive yet concise presentation. But it's very good. But usually we have a very comprehensive presentation, but a little bit less concise like you. But again, thank you very much for your very excellent presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the second representative, the very knowledgeable Professor Choi. Please, Professor Choi.
University of Indonesia, and also the Konferensi all the students. I took this title, the gaps in government performance management, what gaps am I talking about, and then some of the ways that I think to help get somehow to reduce the gaps. And I also am focusing on some of the issues that are probably more problematic in the context of Asian countries. I draw examples from South Korea, but I think those problems are probably shared by Indonesian government. Also, you will be, I think, facing some of the issues that we maybe the government officials and many people, even the scholars in PA, we've been doing very well in terms of creating public services. They do have some points, but these days, especially in somewhat industrialized economies in Asia, we see growing discontent by citizens. They are not very happy with about the government performance. On some aspect, it's okay, but they are not happy with, especially in the government, in their treatment or their handling of the larger problems. And then one of the indicators would be the approval rating of the president, especially in the context of South Korea, Japan. Before Abe was there was no exception. In Taiwan is also a good example. Previous President Ma Ying-jeou, his approval rating was below 10. Even the recent one, Tsai Ing-wen, his approval ratings are so high. What is going on? What is going on? Of course, the PA public administration is not solely responsible for that, but PA public administration and should feel responsible and do something about that. Something is wrong with the government performance. And also some big important problems, especially in the context of South Korea, is income polarization. Birth rate is remarkably low in South Korea, so they are worried about the reduction and the decrease in the population who can provide some labor. the labor market will be in trouble. And youth unemployment, and then also some disaster management. Yes. So what has been going on? What has been going on? And, there can be several diagnoses. Maybe one of them, we call it democracy after democratization in the context of especially South Korea. We thought in 1987, as we have a general popular vote for president, popular vote for local politicians, the democracy is here. But the state of democracy that we have, that they have in South Korea, seem to have some problems. So yes, some of them, including me, they did democracy after democratization. We need to do something about that. The people like Charles Lindbergh thought typical route of development would be, for example, democratization would lead to expansion of the private sector of the society, which is actually expansion and strengthening of the market economy. Then, if it is further nurtured by globalization, then accountability will increase. Democracy will flourish. And people will get happier. But it's not happening. It's not happening. Especially in some of the industrialized Asian countries. Part of it just have it's not really it's not really going as we expect. And we do have some expansion of the so-called very private portion of the society, and then also weakening state capacity. Then, along with it, the decrease in social capital and trust. And then people are getting more easily frustrated. They are becoming cynical. That which leads to a low approval rating of the president and low governability in the society. Next. And then one person, Zhang Choi, is another Choi, not me. There are maybe 1 million Chois in South Africa. But he's a colleague of mine. He retired. He was a professor in political science. But he claimed that democratization in the context of South Korea led to a weakening of the functionality of state institutions. Somehow. And then, at the same time, we saw some concentration of power and resources. So we see a private portion of the society being getting stronger. And then, at the same time, we were actually seeing the weakening of the pluralism and the basis of civil society. And then that actually were conducive to weakening of governability. And then, of course, it's not solely the responsibility of public administration, but public administration in Asia, as they are developed, Asian countries, as they are developing further into the future, they may well face that kind of problem. And then we see those problems happen in some countries. And then one of the contexts will be, for example, in South Korea, income share of top 1% increased level. And then, so what is happening? Political apparatus of state, we don't really feel that it is functioning well. PA is not functioning well somehow to solve the problems. When that citizens think that is very important. Maybe we are seeing the rise of the ghost. There was an author who wrote a book, The Strong Society and Weak States. Is that post coming again? Who will have to see? Next. And then another possible the reason for that kind of problem with the sound growth of democracy after the democratization has to do with, I think, new public management based reform. I'm not to blame just the new public management, but the way it is being accepted, adopted, and implemented in Asian countries, in some Asian countries, I feel to some extent a little problematic. With that, that we are, what is the prescriptions of MPM, the performance management to adoption of some the private sector techniques. So with those, are we solving problems? There is another aspect. Next slide. Maybe we are too much oriented toward output-based performance management rather than focusing on outcome. And then citizens, on the other side, they don't see the outputs of the government. They don't know what the governments are doing, but they know what the outcomes are. Of course, there are the causality between output and outcome is not that straight, but still it is very important to do the public administration in consideration of outcomes, not just outcomes. So in the end, we may be committing some time-free errors. Next. And then I have this typology. I have two dimensions. One is government behavior, which I would say is just output from the government. The other axis is the perception of the people. So there's an outcome side. And then I'm claiming that those two are different. What those that you are doing in the government is not necessarily leading or is not automatic to create the good perception of the some of the part of the citizen in terms of the government performance. So there are some countries. I put Norway, Denmark, Germany, and maybe I'm overestimating them, but it's not important. There are some countries where government is doing pretty much well. And then at the same time, citizens are thinking governments are doing well. But it is happening only in a small, relatively small number of countries in the world. In that case, you have high government. And then the internal reform, as prescribed by new public management, will do it. But not in other countries. In some countries, governments are not doing very well. But citizens are accepting. Government is doing what they are supposed to do, not because they are stupid, but because it is acceptable. Because they are just being acquiescent. So we are too busy to deal with the government, or why the living condition is improving anyway. It's not important. But if you don't do something right now, and then it will lead to a long-term disaster, which I will say. Then the kinds of problems they have to address in those countries, I think are not exactly the ones that the public management is dealing. It is happening, I think, in some developing countries, in Asia, in South Africa, South America, and some other countries. So, for example, in China, I was expert to Chinese national government for 3 years. I had to stay in Beijing 2 months per year. And then I know, I met a lot of Chinese high-ranking officials, and then in the junior high, they know the clerk is speaking. But unless they do something, they do report very simple, very stringent manner. And then something would happen. It could lead to a long-term disaster. So they were in a hurry. So it is exactly the kind of the behavior that I would expect. It's a smart move on the part of the government public officials. So in the context of South Korea, to some extent, Japan, Taiwan, some industrialized economies, they think the people in government think that they are doing well. They are doing well. And then when we are not properly evaluated by the citizens, and then they think the citizens to some extent, they don't know, they are ignorant. They are to some extent stupid. But who are stupid here? They put wrong advice to the president, wrong advice to the minister. And then in the end, we have a diminishing government. The very most recent previous reform initiative put forth by previous President Park, who has been impeached. The government 3.0 was actually geared to exactly to address that aspect, but the people over there did not understand what the actual intention of that reform package was. Now I was not involved in devising that the reform package, but I saw some elements, good elements, so to get more closer to the citizens, to be more outcome oriented, to be more open to the citizens in terms of information sharing and others. There are a lot of the points, but the problem was that they thought government 3.0 was just e-government 3.0. I remember I met with the number two men in administrative agents, very powerful administrative agents. As I was interviewing him, I got involved right after the initiative as a senior person in my CAPA, Korean Association of Public Administration. I was interviewing and do some kind of prelim evaluation report. And then what he was complaining to me that we have been topping the e-government, the evaluation. What do you want us to do more? And then I thought he was very stupid. And then if you do it that way, I will front you. You will get wrong. And then he was surprised. And then something is going on that by that time he couldn't understand what the intention is about. With e-government, what they are doing is that, okay, here are the services. We have a big list of services which we create, good ones. Come and take it. Otherwise, it's okay, never mind. That's their identity. But they are becoming more efficient, maybe to some extent effective. But it is not the way. The government should approach. Something is wrong. They're very deficient in that kind of attitude. But they couldn't understand. I think that kind of understanding was not even there even now. I was maybe addressing to public officials maybe more than 10 times. But as you go to some local governments, I was training them, putting some lectures. But it's still, later on, the people who implement, the senior people who should implement that idea, they didn't know as well. So that goes far. So what I'm saying is that probably we are predisposed. Okay. In that red quadrant, yellow quadrant. But in reality, probably we are in that blue quadrant because the state of the society in terms of the income polarization and other, the development of civil society is no good at all. I mean, in terms of some of the scholars or some of the people with some expectations. So problems, the question should be how do we move from that yellow or blue quadrant to that first, where we have a high governability. I think at least one portion, very important, the pillar of government reform package should address that issue. Next one. So what is happening? Maybe in South Korea we have too much legacy already. Our macro political system is weak. Macro political system in the classical notion of red fort is a place where those things are happening. The forming of the power subsystems, some key decisions in terms of resource allocations and recruitment of key personnel are done. That is the place where they accept the grievance, also do the auditing. When the South Korean government was creating a new subsystem of e-government by enacting a new law, by creating an informatization fund with billions of US dollars, and then with the new Ministry of Information and Communication, they were able to create a new subsystem of e-government and ICT policy. So at the time, their macro political system was functioning. But do we have that kind of functioning macro political system in the South Korean government? I'm a little bit skeptical. And I'm arguing for that. Then South Korea was very successful in terms of having the functioning macro political system. I think it is really the important engine for the South Korean reform and the fast reform in catching up the developed society. But I'm not quite sure whether they still have that. Another one is problems of the accountability structure. With new public management, especially as it is implemented in some Asian countries, including South Korea, we are focusing too much on middle managers, subsequently creating too much the administrative, the red tapes, paperwork. And then also then the high-ranking political appointees are, most of the time, they are exempt from performance management. And the problems that we have, the bigger and larger, more important problems, are not being solved, are not being properly addressed. Then it will also create and lead to, it is conducive to a diminishing governability. Another one is a lack of holistic perspective. In South Korean context, as they have lots of comprehensive plans, mid-term, long-term comprehensive plans. It looks very nice, but if you look into the plan, those plans, it's not top-down. Most of them are top-up. Now they collect plans from ministries and agencies, and then they put together. And this is our plan. And then forward into the president, forward into the prime minister. And with that, what kind of problems are solved? For example, the low birth rate. South Korea's birth rate is between 0.2 and 0.4, very low. Our population will be decreasing in 20 years, maybe 15 years. saw 81 programs run by and initiated by 12 ministries and agencies, not counting local governments. So with those 81 programs, they've been solving, they've been actually spending actually billions of US dollars. Multi expensive. So right now, this year is almost the 12 billion US dollars to solve that problem. But I feel that much portion of that money is being wasted. Because the program itself is I don't really see causality in their class. Another problem is research and development. South Korean government, in South Korea as a whole, as a portion of the GDP money committed to research and development is the highest in the whole world. It's the highest. But now they are talking the productivity paradox in research and development. What is going on? We put so much money to R&D sector. What are we having? Are we having more Nobel laureates? Maybe we are not. Are we having more patents? Patents are created by Samsung, not by the national research institute. Something is wrong. And then as I see their plans, which I did actually last year, to write a chapter with another group. And then the planning procedure, especially in the Ministry of Planning and Strategy, that's some problems. So they were trying to draw a big, nice tiger, but in the end, what you have is a tiger with 3 eyes and 5 tails. It's not functioning. Maybe I'm too late by Korean officials. Next one. Then what do we do? What should we do? I believe we have to develop somehow more outcome-oriented performance management. There can be many ways. Actually, one of the recent projects that I'm doing I have a Center for Governance Design at Korea University. I'm the founding director. One of the recent research initiative that I do is more outcome-oriented performance management, which is really difficult. But still I think we need it. And then the no simple reliance on bureaucratic technical consideration, which is very much outgoing. They're creating a lot of problems, including very severe political problems. For example, at the time of the first year in Believability government, they had a big series of protests. That was created by the decision to import the beef from the United States. Technically it was okay, but when it comes to, when you think of it in terms of outcome, it is very much problematic. And then it was, I think, a kind of bureaucratic judgment to do that, to make that decision to import the US beef. I can give you more detail, but technically it's okay. But politically it was not. But they were ignorant of political outcome. But I believe it was easily measurable, even by the mid-level. Okay. Then, so where was I? I'm drawing on some people in the management, in the management administration. Maybe some white space management techniques. White space is opposite of black space. Right? When you do a performance management, you put in South Korea, for example, if you are a DG, Director General, you are given a strategy objective. If you are a director, you are given performance objectives. And then you have KPIs. Those are black spaces, black space. You are evaluated in terms of those black dots. But what about the white spaces? In your organization, there are lots of white spaces. Outcomes are being created in combination with your black space and white space. And then you don't care about white space. Do the outcome-based black space management. And in the end, problems are still there. And the governability is diminishing. So you need holistic. I think it's more than all of government approach. It should. The all of government approach does not really capture that kind of culture. But anyway, so these are the 3.0 initiative put forth by previous administration. I know it has some components of one of the outcome-based the government administration. Next one. Next one. Yes. So this one actually that choice is key. I wrote a paper to be given to the ministry where I emphasize, and that is the name as a strategic performance management for that government 3.0. But I was exactly addressing the more of a white and black space combination of the performance management. So in the end, at the national, you have the issues at the organizational level, you have the issues at the government level, also national level. Ultimate outcome will be played out at the level of citizens, especially individual citizens. So it is only after you do the performance management that the citizens feel government is doing something. So the performance management of the government should work that way. That was the meaning of the table that I was proposing. Next one. Another elaboration of it. Next one. And then most recently, the problem they have is bigger problem, not smaller problem. UD, societal technology-wise, so-called the fourth industrial revolution is here. And then smart cities, which is my area of research. I had to do some kind of speech or after I back. But those are very important and big issues. Actually, sometimes I think that requires a social level, society level reform, as they were informatizing the South Korean society. But it is the government who that should somehow do some initiatives, even though it will be all taken over by the private sector. And then another aspect is those bigger problems that they are not necessarily wicked problems. People are talking wicked problems, but they are not wicked. Many of them are not wicked. It's a matter of mobilization. to distinguish big problems from medium problems. So what I'm saying is that those bigger problems are solvable, not unsolvable. That's all. And another one maybe use of local knowledge. Big data, big database public administration, and as it is to be adopted in public administration. I think one point is the use of local knowledge. We've been doing a public administration or public service delivery using coefficients. Coefficients of regression model does not reflect individuals. These are more of a legacy-based, traditional type of public administration. But I feel maybe in South Korea it is over. We need the exact numbers for each individual, which can only be addressed by big data. Another maybe point that I would like to mention is visualization of performance management. Visualization. I have some evidence. I think the next one. We have a lot of performance evaluation in South Korea. So the big name, one big name is Republic of Evaluation. But to me, many of them are visualized to somehow to discredit some of the truths. Yeah, I think I'll stop here. That's the evidence that I have. The South Korean performance management has been visualized. The last one, more visualized, more acceptable. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Choi, for your comprehensive presentation regarding the global context of the role states in facilitating society and markets in Asian countries with so many examples regarding the Korean government. Ladies and gentlemen, before we starting our discussion, may I take a few minutes try to wrap up what is Dr. Setiawan mentioned in his presentation. Dr. Setiawan mentioned about the actors of the competitiveness, society, private, government, etc. This is exactly the actors as I mentioned in good governance. Also, element of the collaborative government, this is forum, active participation, active participants and focus. And also the key success factor for collaborative government, I note there is four. One is leadership, second is the commitment, the third government qualities, and the last will be learning culture. And I think the most important Iwan mentioned is what the government of Indonesia try to improve their competitiveness through the bureaucratic reform. Among others, it's like they try to strengthen the human resource management in the public sector, also restructuring the government through dissolving some non-structural agencies, also strengthening the e-gov performance and other things. While Professor Choi talked more global context on performance and gaps and symptoms of the problem in governance. Through started democracy after democratization. Also, he explained about gaps in the government performance. A little bit different with Indonesia. The Korean government worry about the low birth rate problem. In Indonesia, we are in other way around, but we are concerned about a little bit high birth rate problem in Indonesia. I think Ladies and gentlemen, this is my short wrap-up. As Professor Eko mentioned in his opening speech this morning, we try, this is some of initiative through we ensure the non-Western public administration will take place. We will learn from Indonesian experience, also from Korea. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now the discussion is start. Please, if you wanna ask a question, please raise your hand, and I will make this discussion start in a very nice and comfortably, because Pak Iwan should be here maximum 11:30 ya Pak ya, earlier. So if any question for him, please know. Okay, Ibu with the green. Yeah, I see that. 3, 1, 2, 3. Other side. Any others question? Okay. Now as 3 questions, please Ibu with Tosca Burga, also the second Bapak with the green shirt, very back, and then the third is the professor next to the professor. Please, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Ika. I'm from Believability. Actually, I have one question here. I'm from Dr. Setiawan about integrated complaint. This is about the governance. And then I also heard from Professor Choi about macro political system for grievance handling and risk management. Well, my question is, on your opinion, how to integrate complaint between ministry and Indonesia, since complaint is a constructive feedback from the government right now. So yeah, I want to know like what is the real or tangible actions for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Dodi. I'm student of International Administrative Doctoral Program from the University of Brawijaya, Dodi. First of all, I would like to appreciate to all speakers, and this moment I want to ask to Dr. Iwan Setiawan. Actually, this is not quite related with the collaborative governance, but I concern to the local issue about the recruitment of civil servants. My question is, in the current time, is there any policy from the Ministry of Reform about how to accommodate the local people? Because as you know that in Indonesia, the competencies of the recruitment of the applicant is not in the equal competitions quality. Because as you know that maybe 2 or 3 years ago, before 2014, the local issue people recruitment is getting increased. For the example is, I'm from Central Kalimantan. I'm a lecturer of University of Indonesia, because some people or citizens in Central Kalimantan want their people to be involved in the government's basic civil servant bureaucracy. So, is there any policy, or everything is the same rule, especially in the computer assessment test? Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Dodi. Thank you very much. The third will be Ibu from Unida, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's very wonderful morning for us, so we get enriching our mind. And actually, after I heard your explanations, the presentation from Pak Iwan and from Mr. Choi, that's scary, make me scared. You know? Oh my God, this is so big problem that we deal in Indonesia. Let me start from two point of views. First, the principle of performance management, I think I just tried to summarize. One, we have to have strategic perceptions. And the second one, we have to move on the continuous improvement basis. And the third one, we have to have integrated system. And fourth, we have the holistic coverage. That's one side. On another one, in Indonesia, with 260 million people, with a very big gap in terms of the quality of human resource. Talking in Java, like my friend said in my college, it's okay. Jakarta, UI, ITB, they are ready to compete in the global market. But how about in more than maybe 5,000 universities? So this one, the gap is very big. Pak Iwan mentioned about we need a collaboration between society, private sector, and governance. In two sides, we want to put it all together. So the big question is, who actually in charge? In what level we are talking about? And then, how to make everybody to participate? And my friend said, is that performance management ready to give what we call that equality, accessibility, or we just leave it to the competence people? And nation is not only about competitiveness, but also how to bring everybody involved, how to educate people, how to assist them. This is only my wondering and curiosity. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you for very well question that I hope Iwan and can answer this very difficult question, because this remind us when we must defend our dissertation in Eropa. This is the second test for you. Okay, Pak Iwan.
Thank you, Pak Hadi, and thank you for the response from the participants. I think, first of all, I'd like to respond to Abdulli from Kalimantan. Okay. Yeah, local issues is very long discussion, especially for me, because when we are established the new recruitment system, then the problem is what are you asking for. And in terms of how to protect local people, actually we have a lot of variation of the answer actually. Like for instance, we have adjust the passing grade, let's say. For certain region, especially in eastern of Indonesia, we have a little bit lower than western, let's say like that. And also, we also adjust for like quota. Let's say for eastern part of Indonesia, we said that okay, for certain formation, you can set up, let's say for local people, which one the formation that you can go for the local formation. But for the rest, you have to accept for others. For instance, English teacher, if the local the local people can provide it, then it's okay. Then provision for the local. But if it is not, then you have to open for others. Let's say like that. And then, Burami, don't be afraid. I think in my presentation, I always mention that the leaders is play an important role. We can say all the level of leaders. If you talk the local, then the local leaders also very important for that. So the people in charge, involved, we can share actually when the leader can give their, let's say, the anutan, kelompok with it. For example, a good example from leaders that can grab, the involvement of the people actually. So we also aware that the competency gap in Indonesia is quite high. In my case, especially during the recruitment of the new civil servants, between the western and also eastern of Indonesia is quite completely different. Because due to the education level also, the education quality, especially, we also, the result of tests, especially for the civil servant, new entrant civil servant, they will also give some information to the respective team. This is the level of, the level of Indonesian quality, especially for this. Because in this section, we are as a user, So, this technically should provide for that. That is how to, to minimize the gap, especially competency gap in Indonesia. And the last from Ibu Tika, regarding the integrating complaint, actually, for me, this is very useful, especially for some inputs, because it is manageable, because all the complaint can, can collect in one window, in one door, and then, our friend who work for that one, let's say for the call center, can distribute it, to every ministries. Who is responsible for something like that? So, especially for me, I should formulate the policy based on also the complaint, this complaint. So when we categorize what kind of the complaint, especially for me, in terms of, let's say, the recruitment of the new entrants of civil servant, then we have to learn about the complaint, this complaint, and how to solve that problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the question. And ladies and gentlemen, because I don't want to leave this venue, I will, as informed by the committee, that I will receive some token of appreciation from the Faculty of Administration, Faculty of Administrative Science. Please, Pak Iwan.
Thank you very much for the time and attention to our keynote speakers and moderator. Thank you very much. And after this, moving on to the next session, there will be a gift of appreciation for our dear keynote speakers. And for Professor Dr. Ferdinand Sahadi, please welcome to the stage to give the gift of appreciation to Dr. Setiawan Bangsa. Setiawan Bangsa Indonesia for the time and the session on this very beautiful afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the next session, we will still continue the discussion on this plenary session. So please, dear moderator.
Sorry, excuse me, we still have a few minutes before we continue. As Professor Choi already drafted his response to the very difficult question from our colleague. So, please, Professor Choi, your response, please.
Yes, I have two questions. One was about citizen complaints of government. That sometimes pull the legs of public officials, but at the same time they serve as good restraints on the part of public officials, and especially in the context of South Korean government, despite it has all the malfunctions, they want to increase functionalities of whistleblowing, and then they want to deal more systematically with citizen complaints. For example, there's at the central level, they have a Commission on Citizens' Rights and Interest, which is an institution functioning as if there is an ombudsman. They have big cases. They have a big data on citizens' complaints, and then I was working with them to somehow create some classifications, and then some maybe better government the SOPs, standard operating procedures, and some of the rulemakings can be developed out of those companies. I think it can be a better use. That's probably one of the ways to proceed with citizen complaints. The other one is a very difficult question, and then also very important. In Indonesia, we have 260 million great population, and maybe how come you focus on the demand side or needs side? I think probably one good example is China. China has a 1.5 billion population. It creates a lot of paradoxes and dilemmas. But somehow those problems have to be addressed. For South Korea, for example, at the time of the 60s, 70s, 80s, their model was to a kind of Buddhist model of public service. Public services were massively created and massively distributed. And there was some kind of mechanisms to the engines were created. For example, South Korea has a nationally organized local public administration. Still, South Korean mayors and governors, they cannot recruit career civil servants for themselves. It's not possible. It is governed by the national law. If you violate that law, there will be a big problem. You can have some of the political appointees, it's no problem. But if you go out, you have to go out with them. So it is one evidence that they're having nationally organized local public administration. And that public administration has been used to produce massively the public services, for example, the public education. public recreation, infrastructure, police, all of them, they were massively created, the creative people. And they also have a very stringent system of fiscal balance. In South Korea, 80% of taxes are being collected by the national government. Only 20% are collected by local government. But in terms of spending, it's almost half and half. Actually, local spending or local implications, even though it's spent actually by the national government, is actually the local government spent about 60+% of the government's budget. But that way, the mass distribution of public service is addressed. But at the same time, if you do that, there's no future for that. No, we are not. No, we need individuals, citizens, participating, and in a very democratic way. For example, South Korea, the current administration, they have a policy to exit from nuclear power plants. They decide not to. Actually, they decided to exit from the nuclear power plant. From now on, they stop the planning of building new power plants. So they were constructing 2 power plants. It was already under construction. President wanted to stop that. And then they had to create a citizens committee, a citizens panel to make a decision on that. So the point is they need those kind of informed citizens and also talented citizens. So one of the points I think they have to have is that when I was the private providing with some lectures, I had to emphasize on this point. The individualized public service, as they were given that kind of maybe some cost. We are so busy. What do you mean by individualized? Private services. Are you living in Mars? We are living in Earth. Living on Earth. But to me, it sounds very stupid. The power of the public officials. What you mean is that think as if you have in this the mass of people, in this mass of students, for example, you have Steve Jobs in this 100 people. If we think as if amongst the ladies who came to you for some small public service, as if you have Joanne Rollins, who wrote the Harry Potter novel. And it is an attitudinal problem. Unless you have that kind of attitude, there is no future for South Korea. But how is it reflected in public administration? That is another matter. That is something that you have to work on. And also, the research center actually is doing some kind of more specific, maybe some policy report on those. But the way you approach that is almost a dilemma problem. This should be that. I think, believe it or not, I think the Chinese government being have that massive population. Somehow, in their practice, I don't see any PA theory developing along that line in Chinese PA community. No, I don't think so. But when it comes to the practice of public administration, I see some of it. They have actually, very, very differentiated public administration. I think it is smart, already being implemented to some extent. But I think maybe our is to somehow theorize that kind of approach.
context of Asia. Chapter. Thank you, Professor Choi. This is the second round. Maybe there is still a question from the floor. Yes, 1, 2. Can I see another hand? Okay, so far 2 questions, please. Bapak here, and also Ibu with the very beautiful red burqa.
Let me introduce myself. I'm John Kanya Kauna. I'm from the Indonesia Institute of Sciences, Research Center for Physics. I like the public administration very much. Then I have about 3 questions for Professor. One of the questions is that, as you have stated before, that first stated in democracy after democratization, right? And then why citizens in Korea get easily frustrated and angry, for example, about the beef import in Korea? Okay, why they're so easily to get angry? And then the other one, how this is the do they get also frustrated about the digitalization businesses, right? As they how the public planning in how to increase the investment in Korea, how to increase the investment, how to plan the public administration in the term of the increasing the investment in Korea. Okay, and then the third one is how that you have said that local trade problem in Korea, but in here in Indonesia we covered so much trade problem. Why are you opinion not by recent? What is your opinion about this oversight of the world trade? Thank you.
that the American beef incident was, it created a big mess in the street of Seoul. And at the beginning of the Kim president, it was the first year, and actually he was really touched by the demonstration. But it was a relatively small instance. They import a big beef. Originally they were importing beef from less than 22-month cow. But they decided to relieve, somehow loosen the standard up to 30 months. That's not a very big deal. I mean, even though it will increase the probability of mad cow disease, the report of that beef, maybe 1 out of 10, 1 billion in terms of probability. So bureaucrats thought those who are advising the president, this is not a problem. Eating American beef are delicious. But it created a big mess. Why? It's very. I have actually. I'm working on that problem. I have one theory. Is that I'm relying on two-factor theories. I think there may be some kind of protective zones. It is called the protective values. You don't want to somehow invade on those values. I think that decision made an invasion on that protected part of the citizen's value system. So technically it is not a big deal, but in terms of the citizens, the value, especially as related to the public administration government, it was a big deal. And then somehow it snowballed. But I still need to, actually I do some surveys. I have some data, and then it's still difficult to figure out what are those protected values, what would be some two factors, two different factors. Factors contributing on the other side is contributing on that kind of angriness. That's a good question. Investment is in South Korea, the infrastructure investment and research and development investment. Actually, big chunk, normally about 80%, are being done by private sector. When it comes to informatization of the society, they spend about 40, they decide to spend about 40 billion US dollars. But in that initial 40 billion US dollar investment, about 80%, about 35 more actually from the private sector. At the time it was public corporation. The KT, Korea Telecom. Right now is totally privatized. R&D also is that government is giving them some guidelines and some institutions, the legal institutions. So it is the private sector's decision. But at the same time, unless they have certain such good infrastructure, by the time of year 2000, access to the high-speed internet network was about 10 million US South Korean households had access to high-speed internet. 10 million households meaning that each house has 4 or 5 house members, and all of the South Koreans have access to high-speed internet. So somehow it was promoted by private sector. If it is undertaking only by the government, it's not possible at all. The government is not functioning. The government is not functioning. And then high birth rate is we used to have. But these days, it's a big social change. And then the point of realization of the population size was too late for South Korea. So there is an acceleration. So the birth rate of South Korea went down, even down to 1.2. This is very difficult to somehow to get the tendency reversed. So it will take time. Personally, I feel that there will have to be some kind of a social change. It has to be very comprehensive. Their lifestyle should be something closer to maybe French. It will take time, But anyway, there is a presidential commission on population size. It will hit the labor market in a very severe way. Their economy is being threatened. They have at the moment about 1.3 billion guest workers from overseas. And also there is a good realization that South Korea has to be a diversified society. They have to be more generous, I think, to the diversified culture. Big data is they are very keen on big data and the evidence-based PA, especially big data-based PA. But there is a big problem with privacy. At the same time, they have to enact and revise the law that has to do with privacy protection in 2012. It created big blocks. I mean, in terms of the public data usage. I was, up until this April, I was the chairman of the evaluation committee for government data usage. So we have a law, new law, enacted in 2014, promotion of government data law. So each government agency is required to open up. In the previous administration, you have to open up even the paper shops in PDF forms. Sounds stupid, but it was there and it is required. But there are not, of course, many ways to somehow to find out the important information. But anyway, the big data use is very, very important. But still, e-government, as they are doing in South Korea, is too much focused on hardware and software. And then the job descriptions of the people who are in charge of e-government do not really include the data handling stuff. Doing hardware and software undertakings are very different from data-related undertakings. So it is still a big challenge for them. So it has to be still addressed. So I think there are two main obstacles. One is privacy protection. Somehow they have to figure out a way to overcome. Without privacy invasion, they should be able to manage somehow figure out a way to make good use of public data. And also the other one is their mind is using for hardware, software, ICT oriented mind. Data is not ICT. They should not be published.
Thank you, Professor Choi. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of our session. I would like again thank you, Professor Choi, for your great presentation and certainly for your excellent discussion. And with this, I will giving the time and the floor to the MC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and once again, applause for our dear Professor Choi and Dr. for the pleasant session. Thank you very much. And moving on to the next session, we will have a moment of gift of appreciation that will be given by Professor Dr. Eko Plasojo to give to Professor Choi, PhD. Professor Choi and Dr. Roberto Sumarmono, please come on to the front of the stage. And again, a round of applause for the amazing, very pleasant plenary session. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and attention. And on behalf of the committee, we would like to inform that for the most recent update of the schedule, please refer to the ICAS-PGS, the International Conference of Administrative Science website, as informed by the committee. And also, to the appreciation, we should be updated manually on the Play Store. And the next session, thank you very much, we will have our time for lunch. So thank you very much for your time, and please have a great and pleasant lunch, and see you on the next session after lunch break. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.
Mr. Jensen.
Hi. January 6th of this year, the Director of National Intelligence of the United States released a remarkable declassified report detailing the extensive measures to which the Russian government had gone to interfere in the United States election campaign using a variety of different information warfare measures, also known as active measures. What's fascinating about this is that it's not just a problem that faces the United States. The United States is not the only victim of this. In fact, many other countries, including Indonesia, have a fake news problem, and Russia is not the only perpetrator of fake news and the use or weaponization of information to produce a political outcome. Rather, it's often also a lot of domestic actors. So in this research, I want to look more broadly at the factors underlying the believability of fake news. And it's important to understand this, because depending on the particular logics that are involved in the dissemination of fake news, there are different options available for combating it in a particular society. Next slide. So the fundamental question I ask is, if being on the side of truth should have an advantage in an argument, what is it about fake news that makes it believable? And this goes back to Aristotle's writing in the Rhetoric, where he argued that basically truth can often be a trump card, in, no pun intended, in making an argument. Now this is a sign that's a sod farm in Canberra. So this issue about the Russian collusion in with the Trump campaign is something that culturally resonates well beyond the borders of America. I should also note that as we speak right now, it's believed that the first arrests in the investigation that went on afterwards are happening currently, and the first charges are going to be released later on today. So the tricky issue is in defining fake news. There are a lot of different kinds of claims or different ways in which that term has been used. Going back to 2005, there are comedy channels with programs like The Daily Show or The Colbert Report, where they claim the mantra of fake news. And basically their aim was to tell jokes and satirize the news of the day. I define it a little bit more narrowly to concern this particular strategic use of misinformation to produce political results. So I talk about it in terms of claims which are presented as fact when they're either demonstrably false or they're presented as truth when those truth claims are unwarranted and the aim is presented with an intention to deceive. News, on the other hand, presents claims where the truth value is predicated on publicly acceptable grounds of justification. And that's an important differentiation because sometimes you'll have conspiracy theories which are not something that is demonstrably false, but it's not based on, there's no evidentiary basis for this kind of claim that is something that we'd otherwise have public access to. It requires often a great leap of faith. Sometimes literally in terms of like a form of religious faith, as we'll see with respect to some of the fake news claims that were circulated by the Trump campaign. The challenge posed by fake news is important for a few reasons. The first is that there used to be what was called the golden era of journalism, in which news was generally considered to be factual, that journalists did not have a particular political agenda, that they were trying to prosecute. This was particularly true in the case of the United States, where you had a limited number of news broadcasters. The news broadcasters were professionalized journalists who adhered to various ethical regulations. They had multiple sources, and they didn't try to make leaps to push a political agenda. It's secondarily important, for a reason I don't have stated there, but secondarily important, I think, in a context where people are studying governance. Because ultimately, if one of the aims, the aspirational goals of good governance is evidence-based policymaking, living in an era where fake news continually corrodes at the qualifications of expertise, undermining any claims of evidence or scientific authority, it makes it very difficult to enact policy that's based on the best evidence available. It destroys any claims of expertise which would be important to improving a lot of the machinery of government we have today. Next slide. So I define two logics. The first is an informational logic, and that's the idea behind standard news reporting, that they present the evidence that's out there, and that news as a way of just giving us an updating of the state of affairs of things today. There's a classic definition of information within political science by Anthony Downs, and it's data about the current developments and the status of those variables which are the objects of contextual knowledge. It's, if you read a newspaper, the first time you read a newspaper, it updates your knowledge about the status of the variables out there, the context, the state of affairs of things today. The second time you read the newspaper, it's more like literature, because while the words are still meaningful, they don't update your knowledge about the status of those affairs. Hence, information has a fleeting value. Once you've been informed about something, that no longer is useful. You move on to the next data point, the next updating of the information. Information, therefore, updates our knowledge about situations and must be continually replenished. Next slide. An identity logic, on the other hand, involves relating information or claims that are consumed to one's status and standing in society. Chris Aiken and Larry Bartels detailed this process, this politicization of culture and of political identity in America, where they know even the most informed voters typically make choices not on the basis of policy preferences or ideology, but on the basis of who they are, their social identities. In turn, social identities shape how they think, what they think, and where they belong in the political system. In an identity logic, beliefs are not constituted by informational content or updating the status of affairs the way the traditional Downsian model in political science would have us believe, where people learn about the positions of parties and they make a selection, I'm going to support this party or that party because their policy issues have a closer proximity to my own. Rather, people make identifications with parties on the basis of social identities, which have become heavily politicized by the parties themselves. Next slide. This is a quote from an employee of InfoWars, which is one of these gray media sites, these kind of fringe alt-right blogs. Owen Schroyer explains this in an interview he did on NBC News some months ago. He describes his work process. He says, I wake up, I look at the news, I pray. I rarely get directed from Alex Jones, who's the head of InfoWars, or my boss. You know, I don't like calling it that, journalism. I'm just a human that's looking for truth. I'm trying to reach out and be what the people want. Who are the people when he was asked? Well, they are the so-called deplorables, the flyover country, the forgotten Americans. For him, it's not about producing something that has any sort of claim or basis in reality or evidence. It's about representing a particular identity, informing people of things that resonate with who they believe themselves to be. Next slide. So to kind of summarize this informational versus identity logic, they're differentiated, I argue, in three senses. The first is in terms of their temporality. An identity logic, an informational logic, information or the content of communications is fleeting. It's presented and then it's not presented again because it does not have any additional reuse value. Whereas in an identity logic, it has an enduring role because claims are repeated to oneself as a way of reproducing and reinforcing that identity. It's performed every time somebody utters that particular claim. The tone of the communications are neutral in an informational logic because they're not trying to transform anyone or transform a situation. They're just updating the status of the way things are. They're explaining and telling what they are. Whereas in an identity logic, they tend to be polarized and emotional, trying to shape people's dispositions towards those events. Finally, the target of a communication that operates in an informational logic is just a domain of facticity, saying this is how it is. Whereas in an identity logic, the target is to redefine actors and their identities. And depending which logic is the driver behind belief in fake news, there are different ways in which we can correct that situation. Next slide. So to analyze this, I collected a little under 20 million comments on Donald Trump's Facebook page from January 1st to November 8th, 2016. And on average, there are about a little over 82% of all of the comments were retrievable. Some were not given user privacy settings. And in some cases, they went beyond the limits of the application programming interface. I wasn't able to collect all of them. Some of these posts had over 1 million comments on them, which was beyond the capacities that Facebook will allow you to capture without special permissions. And from this, I extracted links, a little over 750,000 links in total, and these represented 30,617 distinct URLs. Now, although I focus on Donald Trump's page, I just wanted to give you an idea of what was going on in Hillary Clinton's page during the campaign. For starters, Trump's page was about 10 times as active as Clinton's page. And on top of that, these were the two most commonly posted links on her page. They were quite negative overall. The first one here is a link to a YouTube video which claims to be 13 straight minutes of Hillary Clinton lying. And the second one is another YouTube video titled Hillary Clinton, a Career Criminal. So they were not terribly flattering. If anybody sat down and went through from her campaign, looked at her Facebook page, they should have been quite disturbed about how badly they were losing the online debate on Facebook. In fact, Facebook Friday, released a statement indicating that a lot has been made of the so-called ads which Russians had bought and were circulating on their site, but actually the most dangerous source of fake news on Facebook during the election were these organic posts of people picking up all kinds of links to bogus or factually just flat out incorrect claims and circulating them. Next slide. So here are the top URL domains on Donald Trump's Facebook page. And actually, this is a distribution that I think Hillary Clinton would have preferred to have than what she actually had. So the most common source is the Washington Post, and followed by the New York Times, followed by the Huffington Post, and those are all editorially left-leaning news organizations. And then finally in fourth, you have Breitbart.com, which is where Steve Bannon, who took over finally as the campaign chairman from August through November 2016, he was from Breitbart. But it was a lot of other sources that were not predisposed to support him. Whereas actually for Clinton, it was Breitbart was #1, and you had info in the news media and Hillary Clinton, and this only goes to show the system is rigged.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting, and also in Indonesia it happened, you know. So I think it will be very interesting. Yeah, we call it hoax news. Yeah. So
Hoax
it,
news,
yeah, we call it hoax news,
Okay,
and it divided us, you know. And sometimes a long time news is repeated again and then something like that.
Right.
Okay, is there any comment or question? I think it's very interesting. Is there any comment? Okay, Mr. Vice, please.
Firstly, thanks for the presentation. It's very interesting. So I want to ask about what do you think about fake news that made by the, for example, made by the governments, because like what you said before, that Donald Trump is the president that used most lies in the campaigns. So if that trick or that method used in the government implementations, what do you think, and what can the citizens like us do about that?
Well, I think it's a complicated issue because obviously when a particular political official uses those kinds of lies, the supporters take that as something that they can buy into, and they use that as a talking point to respond at any given point in time. So, for example, as Robert Mueller is getting ready to arrest somebody, or maybe has already done so while we were speaking, I haven't checked my phone yet, they've been working on a counterclaim that this is all a hoax, that the real collusion is that Hillary Clinton paid for somebody to investigate him, and they talked with Russians, and therefore they were colluding with Russians to throw the election off. That has zero basis in any sort of reality. In fact, that dossier was funded by Republicans first, then by Democrats, and not by Hillary Clinton, but by Democratic attorneys who were working on their behalf. It was never released, and it was actually then done pro bono by Christopher Steele and given directly to the FBI because they were really concerned that this was frightening. There's a big problem there. Any case, it becomes difficult to just combat that to the supporters because they're going to go back to this is the attack on our leader. This is how the system is rigged. This is the collusion that's going on, and we are under threat. So we need to say, look over here, and whatever else. So in terms of addressing those kinds of things, I think a few things need to be done. The first is that you still need to speak out against fake claims. And people need to speak out in favor of the institutions, especially the media institutions, that do professionalized work, that do their due diligence to find the evidence. And just like in the United States, in Indonesia, I understand as well, media institutions have systematically gone under attack for many years, and it's very hard to rebuild that credibility. So it's important that people speak out favorably of these institutions, even when they're not the beneficiaries of the reporting, to give them credibility. Additionally, beyond that, it's important to understand, given the identity logic circulating there, to connect the factual claims to the identity logic that these people are prosecuting. So for instance, I know less about how to put that in the context of Indonesia. In the context of the United States, in terms of defending somebody, like the Mueller investigation that's going on right now, one of the things that Trump supporters had articulated time and time again was the need to return to a situation of law and order. Well, Mueller was appointed originally by a Republican. He was kept on by Barack Obama, a Democrat. He has been recognized as probably one of the most impartial persons to apply law and order. They describe him as a Boy Scout. This is a guy who's ruthless, he's smart, his only vice is the law. And if somebody supports the idea of law and order, they'll let this man do his job. And that's something that has credibility now for both many prominent Republicans in the Congress, and hopefully that identity aspect of the demand for law and order is something that can be used as a fulcrum with Trump supporters as well, to get them to buy into, let the man do his job if you believe in law and order, because he's the one that's got the most credibility out there to bring justice wherever it should be brought.
Okay, please.
Actually, it's just a comment. Thank you, sir. You just gave me a new useful framework or lens for analyzing the phenomenon of fake news. Especially so that it's so prevalent in the Philippines. Maybe you've heard of the fake news wars between the anti-Duterte and the pro-Duterte identities or groups. So again, thank you, Sir.
Is there any comment, question? But it's a very tough research, Mr. Jensen, because you research on 19 million comments, right, from in the Facebook.
Yeah, I have about 2.5 million more from Clinton's page, but say I didn't talk about it.
Very tough, I think. Probably maybe others. Okay. Yeah, we have the same situation here. Yeah, actually, in the gubernatorial election of Jakarta, it's very dividing us between the citizen, because also a lot of hoax or you call it fake news, and it's about identity as well. So yeah, it's more on identity, because our identity become the significant factor. Okay. Is there any question? If there is no, then we can give applause to Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Jensen. So that's all our presentation today. So I will end this session. But before, I just want to announce some announcement. At 7 o'clock, I think there will be a welcoming dinner. So all of you is invited to attend the dinner in the bar room. Yeah, so please attend the dinner. And then the second announcement from me, I'm involved as a publication chair in this conference. So I just want to remind all of you that the revised paper is, we wait the revised paper until 6 November. So please revise your paper accordingly to the reviewer comments and also to the technical issue by the Atlantic Press. I think that's all. Thank you.
Sir, in line with that, how do we know if our revision is already like good or okay?
Okay, there will be the session editor that will inform you if your revised paper is already okay or you need still more revised on technical matters. Maybe after this conference, maybe tomorrow there will be announcement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Photo session, please.
Oh, photo session. Okay. Okay, so we will have a photo session in this session, please.
Which was one of these fringe alt-right sites, and Zero Hedge, another fringe Russia-backed alt-right site as well, and a whole bunch of other ones like Fox News. Those kind of came in later. However, if we get to the next slide, if we look at the links that were most commonly posted, that were repeatedly posted from those URL domains, it turns out that the Washington Post links were posted once or twice for a single article, and that was it. There were lots of different ones that were posted, but they were not repeatedly posted. The most repeatedly posted links on Trump's Facebook page tend to emphasize identity characteristics. So the most common one was from a web page called All Talk, No Action, which was an anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim page. And it was all about how Donald Trump was going to stop immigrants and people who were not Christian or Jewish from coming into the country. The next one was from John Oliver, who was a comedian. He was critical of Donald Trump, but that was a 20-minute or 30-minute video from a TV program that he did, in which he was saying that Donald Trump is untrustworthy, he's hypocritical, and so forth. The next one was actually a link to the 538, which is an election forecasting site. And I coded that as factual because this was a group that was just trying to aggregate polling data and predict the outcome of the election. Ironically enough, they predicted that Donald Trump had no chance at all of winning the election, and although that counts as informational in orientation, it was actually factually incorrect. And then PolitiFact, which was just a link to Donald Trump's PolitiFact page, which said basically he has lied more systematically than any candidate in the history since they've been keeping track of the presidential elections. The rest of these were all claims about either Hillary Clinton's identity or Donald Trump's identity. And so you can see that prevails over everything else. Next. Next, I looked at the emotional polarity of the comments surrounding these different links that were frequently posted. And there isn't a lot of emotional content for many of these. In fact, the All Talk, No Action was, I think, 289 repetitions of people, this one person posting that same link over and over again, trying to generate traffic on his particular page. And that's a common tactic in fake news, a lot of clickbaitish stuff so people can get the advertising revenue. However, you do see a number of these which are have a high degree of emotional content. This one's from Right Wing Watch, which claimed that Trump was going to be the savior of Americans, both in terms of providing physical security from dangerous foreigners, as well as spiritual security from people who did not believe in the dominant religions in America. The next most common ones with strong emotional content was actually a link to the US Criminal Code, which was behind an allegation that because Hillary Clinton destroyed some hard drives after she was done using the computers as Secretary of State, which is actually standard operating procedure for hardware that contained secret or secure materials on it, so other people couldn't get a hold of that and steal that information. But they were trying to use that as a form of fake news to claim that she was therefore disqualified from office. And there's also a lot, there's another link that made the same claim. And then this one here, which was a link to a petition to get Donald Trump arrested for inciting violence at a rally, also very emotionally charged as well in those links. But those, again, were all aimed at identity claims as opposed to factual claims. Next. So the next measure I used was to look at the temporal duration. That is, what was the first time and the last time a particular link was presented. Now, if it was informational in content, you present it once and the next day it no longer pertains to the state of affairs. However, here, and these links have, these link domains, this was the average for any domain which had a link posted to it at least 15 times, and then I averaged across all those links. The most common or the most longest enduring link domain was from a site called secondcalldefense.org. Secondcalldefense.org actually, there's a block on the University of Canberra security system because that site advocates violence. It's a Second Amendment self-defense site which actually encourages people to what they call stand your ground. If somebody is approaching you, they advocate shooting the person as a means of exercising your right to self-defense. They depict the world in as a very dangerous place. And that's the advocacy that's going on that site. It's not, they have nothing to do with any statistics which actually show violent crime has been decreasing in America. They tell you that it's dangerous and you must stand your ground from people who are different than you, who might threaten you, and you may need to shoot them. They also offer insurance in case you're sued afterwards. But anyway, the next one, it comes from a site called Save a Republic, which develops a particularly parochial image of what America is and ought to be, and as a Christian nation and so forth. Next one is Kingdom Engineers, which is another eschatological site which kind of has this implication of Donald Trump as both a political and religious savior for the country. Never mind that the man is not a devout religious person at all. And so on. And they're all these kind of these identity-focused claims that endure for quite a long time. It's not any of it's not like people are posting repeatedly over a long duration in terms of number of days, claims about, say, where the election's at, or claims about, for example, what the effects of certain policies might be. Next slide. So finally, I wanted to look at the role of elites in terms of the spread of false information. And I took 5 lies which were listed by PolitiFact, which was the most commonly cited fact-checking site. It was the most commonly referenced fact-checking site on Trump's Facebook page. And those included the claim that Hillary Clinton would allow in thousands of violent criminals across the border, that Black or African American communities were in shambles, that John Podesta, the campaign chair of the Clinton campaign, had rigged his polling such that it would cause voter suppression. In fact, the claim for that had zero bearing on any of the underlying information they even cited. There's basic reading comprehension problems involved in trying to make that claim. That Obama and Clinton had founded ISIS, and that the unemployment rate was at 42%. These solid lines indicate the times in which those lies were uttered in speeches. With regards to the claim about unemployment, basically there's hardly a blip at all when Trump had uttered that lie. That's a lie not about identity, that's a lie about the state of affairs. Very little traction with that. At this point, this is where Trump uttered the lie about that Clinton would allow thousands of violent criminals to come pouring across the border. You see that spikes there. The biggest spike comes here after that lie was first uttered in a speech. That coincides, however, when Trump was repeating the lies during a address which was actually streamed on Facebook. And a lot of these came from people writing in the comments section while they watched that, that there are thousands and thousands of dangerous criminals that are coming across the border, and it's Hillary Clinton's fault and she'll make it worse. There's a spike here corresponding to when Trump claimed first in a speech that Clinton and Obama founded ISIS, which was just a ridiculous claim. Regarding the claim about Black communities being in shambles, there was not a single instance of anybody amongst those nearly 20 million comments using the phrase Black community or African American community. They didn't mention that lie one bit in the comments at all. So that's zero all the way across. And finally, the lie about Podesta rigging the polls. Interestingly enough, the blip on that happens the day before Trump uttered that. And this is one of those cases that people have been pointing to of how the process of the Russian information warfare operated. The night before Trump uttered that, it actually appeared in what's called a kind of a gray information source. In this case, it was Zero Hedge, which a lot of evidence suggests has ties to Russian intelligence agencies. And it was first, they published an article the night before he gave that speech, which cited WikiLeaks. And the claim was that John Podesta, in one of the emails that had been stolen by the Russian government, this email came from 2008, not 2016, was using a polling mechanism which would oversample Democrats so they could do some various analyses. Well, Podesta didn't order that. It was done as a typical polling technique so you can better explore, given the need to have enough statistical power to sample certain communities and really peer down at various subcategories within a particular community of persons. And it was done during the Obama transition by other people, had nothing to do with Clinton, had nothing to do with John Podesta, and had nothing to do with any of the claims that were being made, but that was the claim in the article, and Trump repeated that claim. And that got people later on to repeat that claim as well. That was a claim about the identity of the Clinton campaign that drove the repetition of that particular lie. In the case of the two factual claims, however, there's very little or no uptake about that at all. Next slide. So here are the broad conclusions that I've drawn. First of all, is that I think there are clear distinctions empirically in terms of how the informational and the identity logics to the spread of communications operate. And that identity logic tends to be most prevalent with respect to the flow of false information. Informational and identity logics are differentiated by their temporalities. Information tends to have very fleeting value, whereas identity claims tend to endure over time. They're regularly repeated. They don't lose their value through the repetition, as well as the emotional valences associated with these materials, that they tend to engender a stronger emotional response when you're talking about the nature of the character of individuals or organizations. And this suggests that not all fake news is the same. Factually incorrect statements do not have traction unless they're linked to these identity claims. And that's important when we think about how to deal with fake news, because simply putting fact-checking out there, as we saw with, for example, the response to the use of PolitiFact, one of the most commonly used fact-checking sites in American politics, that just became then another means to which an identity claim was prosecuted. That was, Donald Trump is a liar. Clearly, he's got one of the highest rates of lying of any candidate out there that we've seen in recent history. And on the other hand, by saying that this is not true, it just gets responded with an identity logic such that, well, then PolitiFact is part of the collusion of the news media and Hillary Clinton, and this only goes to show the system is rigged.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting, and also in Indonesia it happened, so I think it will be very interesting. Yeah, we call it hoax news. Yes. So we call it hoax news, and it dividing us, and sometimes a long time news it repeated again and then something like that.
Right.
Okay, is there any comment or question? I think it's very interesting. Is there any comment? Okay, Mr. Price, please.
Firstly, thanks for the presentation. It's very interesting. So I want to ask about what do you think about fake news that made by the, for example, made by the governments? Because like what you said before, that Donald Trump is the president that used most lies in the campaigns. So if that trick or that method used in the government implementations, what do you think, and what can the citizens like us do about that?
Well, I think it's a complicated issue because obviously when a particular political official uses those kinds of lies, the supporters take that as something that they can buy into, and they use that as a talking point to respond at any given point in time. So, for example, as Robert Mueller is getting ready to arrest somebody, or maybe has already done so while we were speaking, I haven't checked my phone yet, they've been working on a counterclaim that this is all a hoax, that the real collusion is that Hillary Clinton paid for somebody to investigate him, and they talked with Russians, and therefore they were colluding with Russians to throw the election off. That has zero basis in any sort of reality. In fact, that dossier was funded by Republicans first, then by Democrats, and not by Hillary Clinton, but by Democratic attorneys who were working on their behalf. It was never released, And it was actually then done pro bono by Christopher Steele and given directly to the FBI because they were really concerned that this was frightening. There's a big problem there. Any case, it becomes difficult to just combat that to the supporters because they're going to go back to this is the attack on our leader. This is how the system is rigged. This is the collusion that's going on, and we are under threat. So we need to say, look over here, and whatever else. So in terms of addressing those kinds of things, I think a few things need to be done. The first is that you still need to speak out against fake claims, and people need to speak out in favor of the institutions, especially the media institutions, that do professionalized work, that do their due diligence to find the evidence. And just like in the United States, in Indonesia, I understand as well, media institutions have systematically gone under attack for many years, and it's very hard to rebuild that credibility. So it's important that people speak out favorably of these institutions, even when they're not the beneficiaries of the reporting, to give them credibility. Additionally, beyond that, it's important to understand, given the identity logic circulating there, to connect the factual claims to the identity logic that these people are prosecuting. So for instance, I know less about how to put that in the context of Indonesia. In the context of the United States, in terms of defending somebody, like the Mueller investigation that's going on right now, one of the things that Trump supporters had articulated time and time again was the need to return to a situation of law and order. Well, Mueller was appointed originally by a Republican. He was kept on by Barack Obama, a Democrat. He has been recognized as probably one of the most impartial persons to apply law and order. They describe him as a Boy Scout. This is a guy who's ruthless, he's smart, his only vice is the law. And if somebody supports the idea of law and order, they'll let this man do his job. And that's something that has credibility now for both many prominent Republicans in the Congress, and hopefully that identity aspect of the demand for law and order is something that can be used as a fulcrum with Trump supporters as well, to get them to buy into, let the man do his job if you believe in law and order, because he's the one that's got the most credibility out there to bring justice wherever it should be brought.
Okay, please.
Actually, it's just a comment. Thank you, sir. You just gave me a new useful framework or lens for analyzing the phenomenon of fake news, especially so that it's so prevalent in the Philippines. Maybe you've heard of the fake news wars between the anti-Duterte and the pro-Duterte identities or groups. So again, thank you, sir.
Is there any comment, question? But it's a very tough research, Mr. Jensen, because you research on 19 million comments, right, from in the Facebook.
Yeah, I have about 2.5 million more from Clinton's page, but say I didn't talk about it.
Very tough, I think. Probably maybe others.
Kita punya masalah sama ya.
Okay. Yeah, we have the same situation here.
Situation in DKI.
Yeah, actually, in the gubernatorial election of Jakarta, it's very dividing us between the citizen, because also a lot of hoax or you call it fake news, and it's about identity as well. So yeah, it's more on identity, because our identity become the significant factor of this. Okay. Is there any question? If there is no, then we can give applause to Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Jensen.
Okay, and we move to Joseph Tiu Songko for the third presenter. Let me introduce yourself first. Our third presenter is Joseph
Tiu Songko or your best TJ?
Yes, Tiu Songko.
And TJ got his bachelor degree in public administration, University of Philippines, and master degree in political science at Kobe University in Japan, and also for Doctor of Philosophy in political science in Kobe University in Japan. And he has research interests including decentralization reform and historical institutionalism to explain institutional or policy change. And another interest is long-term economic and social recovery from disasters. And the last one is community-driven. Development and social enterprises. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our presenter, TJ.
Thank you very much. I guess I have to stand. First of all, I'd like to express my sincerest thanks and appreciation for the privilege to make a presentation today. As you can see, the title of my presentation is on defining and mapping social enterprises for the Philippines. The background of the study is that I was asked to, together with a team of researchers, to look at, to prepare a policy paper towards the development of an enabling policy framework for social enterprises in the Philippines. But in the process, realized the need to look at the theoretical, conceptual aspect of social enterprises and located from the global phenomena of social enterprises, both in practice and scholarship. So I'll follow this outline, context in the Philippines and of course in some countries in Asia, the literature, and an attempt to frame social enterprises and development, some conclusions and policy implications, and we are also trying to develop initial, emerging, enabling institutional framework for social enterprises ecosystem. I would definitely would like to get your inputs because this is an emerging work, and as researchers we really value the inputs of all academics and practitioners. So just putting in context where the Philippines is for the past 3 decades in terms of economic growth, we really have been left behind for some time, but in recent years we are one of the leading economies in Asia in terms of economic growth. For the past 5 years we've been having robust growth in terms of the economy. Just last year we had, I think we were the second in terms of economic growth after that of China or Vietnam. On the left-hand graph, I mean the right side, you'll see the data on unemployment and underemployment. This is very significant for the Philippines in terms of pursuing development because you will note that despite the decline of unemployment, the problem of underemployment continues to persist, which is analysis show that underemployment is one persistent problem that could explain why the poverty reduction efforts in the Philippines is not as fast. So some more comparative data, you look at, of course, Indonesia and the Philippines in terms of poverty headcount ratio at $1.9 a day. We are not that far, two countries, and in the same manner, if you look at the $3.1 a day, again, we are also classmates in that regard. So I don't know the current figure of underemployment in Indonesia right now, but maybe that's something that we can look into. The other figures on per capita gross national income. It's been growing, but The problem in the Philippines is that there is growth, but there's also persistent inequality. So within this context, that there are attempts to look for policy innovations and the emergence or the promotion, if you may, of social enterprises is one possible approach that's being looked into to address particularly the issue of underemployment, because underemployment is really in the rural areas where the bulk of the poor are, particularly the agriculture and services sector. It's not really in the industrial sector. There's a need to generate sustainable livelihood and quality jobs to reduce poverty. And thus there's an emerging phenomenon for social enterprises to address critical constraints to inclusive growth and socio-economic development. It is within this context that we try to, there's an attempt to promote, if you may, or look at the possibility of strengthening the role of government as an enabler, regulator, and financier, as well as intermediaries, as capacity builders towards sustainable social enterprises growth and development at scale. However, there is a need to formulate. Recent studies show in 2015 that there's a need to formulate an operational definition for social enterprises, so that it will inform policymakers and engender better understanding by other stakeholders. I happened to attend a conference earlier this year in May. It's called CESA. It's an Association of Social Enterprises in Southeast Asia. And one of the observations that we saw is that there seems to be an identity crisis of social enterprises in this part of the world. According to DeFerne and Yissens, academics from Europe, they caution not to simply support the development of social enterprises by exporting US or European approaches. If SEs are not embedded in local context, they will just be replications of formula that will not last a very long time. But they will only last as long as they are fashionable. Hence, there is a need to provide policy-relevant knowledge towards enabling policy and institutional framework to foster social enterprise development. So within this context, that I tried to review the literature on social enterprises, and you will note different definitions of social enterprises from different fields or disciplines. In the US, they're looking at the business school definition. I'll not go into this into detail, but the perspective is coming from the business schools. There's another definition that looks at social enterprises as either not-for-profit or for-profit organizations. So it's really a hybrid organization using market-based approaches to achieve social or environmental objectives. SEs pursue their mission while maintaining financial sustainability. In the Philippines, there is this movement looking at SEs as a social mission-driven, wealth-creating organizations that have a double or triple bottom line, explicitly have as principal objective to reduce poverty. In Europe, they have this definition which I'd like you to look at because this will be used in my study. SEs as not-for-profit private organizations providing goods or services directly related to their explicit aim to benefit the community. They generally rely on collective dynamics involving various types of stakeholders in their governance bodies. They place high value on their autonomy and they bear economic risks related to their activities. And so on and so forth. This one is coming from the US literature, where they locate particularly Janul Kerlin, one of the leading scholars in social enterprises, trying to explain the emergence of social enterprises globally. And she defines it as any market-based approach to address social issues where benefit is a primarily aim and a business source of revenue provides support for an activity or organization. Here, they try to locate social enterprises in this spectrum. On the right side, you have the for-profit businesses, and on the other side, you have the charity-based nonprofits. So if you look at the literature further, there's an attempt to reconceptualize the third sector or social economy by broadening its sphere to include social enterprises. I think from a discipline of public administration, this is relevant because if you'll remember, in the early 90s, we had this project on looking at the non-profit organizations by Lester Salomon, looking at the emergence of non-profit institutions. And here, they're trying to broaden the sphere of non-profit organizations to include social enterprises that are more sustainable in terms of financially. There's also the divergent paths in US and European research tradition. So if you look at models in the US, it's more of the relationship between the private sector and the civil society. But if you look at the European models, it's more of the crossroads, looking at the public policies, the government working with civil society organizations. And there's also of late looking at historical institutional analysis and explaining the emergence of social enterprises by Janelle Kerlin. So here you'll see this, the three sectors of the economy. There are attempts to look at social enterprises, the fourth sector, but I argue here that looking at the experience of Europe, I think we should locate social enterprises in the third sector and nonprofit in terms of providing an enabling environment for them to grow and flourish. Again, looking at another framework to explain the emergence of social enterprises by Kerlin, he looks at the historical institutional evolution of country context. So the emergence of social enterprises varies from country to country, from regions, global regions, and to countries, and even in Asian context. So personally, I think if we want to understand the emergence of civil society and even social enterprises, we have to analyze it from within country, in-depth country cases using existing frameworks. Looking at the literature in East Asia and Asia Pacific, models in Southeast Asia seem to converge with that of the Western European model, but diverge with the US model, where we see the social enterprises emanate from the strong link between the state, civil society, public policies, and cooperatives and non-profit organizations. There's still limited literature on SEs and ASEAN. SE's definition in Asian context remain too broad, elusive, and murky. There is identity crisis of social enterprises, I argue, in this part of the world, hence the need for us academics and scholars to come in from the field of discipline of public administration, working, collaborating with the business, School of Business and other disciplines. And the need for institutional analysis to understand the emergence of SEs in this part of the world. How do we frame social enterprise and development? It still is pursuing democratic governance through the social economy approach, through economic activity, which is the entrepreneurial or productivity side, involving public purpose organizations, the non-profit approach at the local level towards community development. So here we also have to understand the scope and universe of SEs as a subsector. We have to avoid confusing the terms social enterprises, social entrepreneurship, and social innovation. These are commonly interchanged. No? If we want to put a good enabling policy environment framework, we have to be very careful in the use of these terms: SE, social enterprises, entrepreneurship, and social innovation. In the paper, I tried to introduce or reintroduce applying Ostrom's institutional framework to analyze the emergence of SEs. I'll not deal into that here, but I think it might be applicable to use it in explaining understanding social enterprises. Some of the variables that Ostrom looked into in her studies. Okay, I'll just move forward. This is what we're trying to propose here in the paper. We want to understand and enable social enterprises. We have to look at the organization, the social enterprises organizational forms, We have to look at social entrepreneurship as processes, where you look at business tools and innovative practices, and social investing, which includes financing and intermediation. And at the end of towards the latter part, you have the social innovation, which is actually an outcome of these processes. So some dimensions of social enterprises. There are 3 dimensions according to the literature in Europe. You have economic and entrepreneurial, the social dimension, and the governance structure, which is really participatory in nature, in terms of decision making, in terms of autonomy from external actors. So moving forward, if you want to map social enterprises, there are emerging models, recent models, to look at it from the perspective of, say, according to Fernie, as a non-profit entrepreneur model. It could be a social business model, or it could be a public sector model. As we know, in Europe, it's largely social enterprises are service providers for the government because of their welfare states. Okay, and there's another way to look at it in terms of a spectrum. Social enterprises here. Another way of looking at it in terms of mapping. Again, if you want to regulate social enterprises, you have to have a good understanding of the spectrum where it lies. To synthesize, defining and mapping social enterprises, SEs is neither focused on pure public good, non-profit activity, nor market-based solution to address social problems or social conditions. Rather, it is a hybrid approach combining social mission, business methods and innovative practices, social investing including intermediation and financing, and governance systems at the community level to attain collective social and or economic impact, i.e. social innovation. So it's comprised of dynamic organizations that produce, sell, or deliver goods and or services with explicit societal mission or benefit to the community where it operates. So it could be producing goods, or it could be providing services at the community level. In conclusion, there's a need to strengthen the ecosystem for social enterprises towards sustainable livelihood employment, addressing the issues of underemployment as impinging on poverty reduction and sustainable development. Formulating an operational definition and subsequent policy reform for social entrepreneurship and social innovation would benefit from macro and micro institutional analysis of SEs at the country level. This is one important implication from this review, is that enabling a social enterprise or social enterprises requires looking at what a social enterprise can be, rather than prohibiting or limiting its growth and development by prescribing a restrictive definition of what a social enterprise is. This is one warning of Professor Forney during our conference before, that if you limit or restrict through a legislation, social enterprises might not flourish or grow. And this is also the result of this review. Policy implications, the need to register and profile social enterprises, building on this paper, enable registration and or transition of traditional cooperatives, non-profit organization, and even micro-enterprises to become SEs or social enterprises. There has to be support measures for development of existing organizations, startups, and long-term work and social integration, including that of disabilities, elderly welfare services, and other service provisions such as healthcare, education, access to water, etc. So social enterprises do not only cater or are involved in producing goods, but they could also be service providers at the community level. And of course, there is a need to engage academic and research institutions both at the central and local levels. I will end with this framework that we're trying to develop. If you want to enable social enterprises with the right ecosystem, we are proposing that the need to bring into focus the institutional context, governance dynamics, the role of public policy, which is our domain, and of course policy levers, social objectives, and social enterprises towards social innovation. So this is just a representation of what I just mentioned. If we want to enable the growth and development of social enterprises, we have to consider the policies, norms, enforcement mechanisms, accountability mechanisms, networks, and intermediaries, so that social enterprises will have the know-how and capital, so that when they perform, we'll be able to achieve the triple bottom lines of creating social impact. With this, I'll end my presentation, and I'll just receive comments or questions later on that will respond. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, TJ. I think your presentation was very clear and detailed. And is there anybody who wants to ask from TJ, our expert today? Maybe Lovita?
Not asking really, but just that if it's possible to discuss. Your presentation cannot come more timely, I think, to Indonesia, because I do agree that the term social enterprise is ambiguous, and it is practiced in different ways in Indonesia. So you got award for social enterprise, and what you have is this is a business base. So it's an enterprise, but they're doing it locally. So they help farmers, for example. But then the term social becomes, as you said, murky. So maybe that's the first thing that should be not defined but clarified. When the term social combined with enterprise, as we know, business enterprise, small, medium enterprise, and we know, for example, and we know what type of enterprise this is. It has to make profit, be it in the first year or once every month. You know, unlike the big companies. But you start talking about SMEs, then there's clear perspective on what you're talking about. Once we take out one or two words and we put in social, what is the social enterprise? Is it the institution, the legal form of the institution? It has to be social, and this is not for profit. But this is not charity, for sure. And it's not easy to say you don't go for profit, because then there's a question of sustainability, of the social impact that you would want from such organization. If social is the purpose, then the social problem, for example, then what is social problem? Are you talking about employment? Are you talking about poverty? But not necessarily economic. So social is not economic. Is it going? Will it be a clear difference between the two, or is it a bit of one and the other? So is it an organization? Is it a purpose? Is it the activities? Because if I see your spectrum, that's exactly. If I see the spectrum, I know how the way things, or I can see that this is pure charity, with all its characteristics and features, and this is not a business. What I'm a bit confused is about the CSR, because CSR is a type of, if I say business strategy, if I want to be sarcastic about it, it's a business strategy, and it's also attached to the business, the mother company, and all its strategy, vision, mission, and so forth. Now we come to what's interesting for me is to put social enterprise within that spectrum. So what I'm getting from this is that this ongoing study starts from the word enterprise, as in small medium enterprise. So that's the original question. Is it going to be differentiate, as in social? We're just borrowing the word enterprise, but it's completely different area. So are we truly talking about social and societal, and then society? Is that the words or the term that goes with it, or is it another type of SMEs, for example? Because the SMEs have one particular character. You have to make profit. Even the CSR, the pyramid, the bottom line is you have to be economically viable. Then you cannot go up. So is that the logic that FE will like to take? Because with the word social enterprise, I think it has wider spectrum than the SMEs, and it has bigger role. And people or even a country would give more weight or more responsibilities to social enterprise. How does a social enterprise supposed to carry that out? I think that's the question. So really, I appreciate this, and after this, I'm sure I'm gonna talk to you about this.
Okay, if I may respond quickly. Exactly, this the very question that's facing all of us in the development world. But that's why I had to go back to the literature. So it depends on the model that we're going to use. If you look at the literature in the US, it's really non-profit organizations. So there's no way that you can earn. But if you look at the social economy model in Europe, and they have very good models in terms of social enterprises. They have this definition, I think, looking at the three dimensions: the governance, economic, and social dimensions. This, according to the Fernie, it's a robust framework that should be, whose element should be present. Economic, entrepreneurial, it should be able to sustain itself. That's why I tried to synthesize it in this definition. It's a hybrid organization, definitely. It's not a private organization. It's a hybrid with a social purpose. And I think the critical issue for policy is where do we locate social enterprises? For example, in the Philippines, the Department of Trade and Industry registers private companies. But if you become a business, a partnership or corporation, it's with the Security and Exchange Commission. Where non-profit organizations are registered by many different, again, organizations. So in this paper, I try to locate it building on the literature from the Western, from the European context, from the social economy side, where social enterprises could be part of broadening the non-profit social economy sector. Because if you put it in the somewhere between the private sector and the non-profit, again, it's difficult to register and regulate, and so on and so forth. So the same issues will emerge. And what else? Yes, subsequent paper on this is I tried to look at registering social enterprise actually in the Philippines, and I don't know how it would work in your country. But yes.
But I'm interested in how the CSR is put within that spectrum.
Yeah. The CSR is actually, there's one spectrum here. It depends on the motivation of the organization. So practically the spectrum for social enterprises covers this, according to the work of Alter, this whole spectrum before. Depends on the motivation, shareholder accountability, and redistribution of shareholders. But if you have a legislation at the country level, then that would define where you would locate social enterprises. If you have an X, like for example, I think in Korea they already have legislation, and in some parts of Europe they have this European definition of social enterprises where, for example, 25% of your surplus should be reinvested in the enterprise or in a community or in a particular social objective. So it depends again on at the country level or whatever policy framework we're operating. Okay. So, yeah, again, it depends on, that's why we try to look at different spectrum so that we look at how do we look at it from the country level rather than simply copying one normative model. Of course, there has to be an ideal situation where you have to have the 3 dimensions in as far as the organizational form is concerned. It's an extension of the cooperativism before, where in cooperatives you redistribute to shareholders, but here it's not more of redistribution, but it's really more of reinvesting in the enterprise or in particular social mission. So I guess we can continue to discuss, but there's an initial work to look at this from a more academic, scholarly perspective, leading towards operational policy regulation, and so on and so forth.
I just have a small question. Already, I guess the doctor had asked the question, and you already just explained in your way. I guess you showed the definition of SE, the American version of SE, how they defined it. The Curlin's definition, I guess. Curlin, 2017, yeah.
This one.
So look over here, the social issues where social benefits are primarily aimed at a business source of revenue provides support, business revenue. Normally when we talk about social, just like Doctor explained that CSR, corporate social responsibility, so we assume that there are no revenues, right? So that's why, it's pretty conflict showing that, although you are working as a social, and you are also getting revenue. I have a suggestion over here for you, might be because when we are doing research, so there are multiple definitions, as you explained yourself, that the American version, the European version, they have different definitions of social enterprises, right? So when we are doing research, we have to operationalize the definition first. In which context we are defining this concept. So it would be easy otherwise, if we will take it as if we will generalize the same concept, so we cannot, I guess, to get the conclusion, or we cannot reach at the findings. So that's why I guess it's a pretty confusing. And the second part that normally you just explain the third sector as a social enterprise. So for example, if I will say that the government organizations, like the public sector or the private sector, if they are doing their role at a social part, so do you think that we need a third sector that were focusing specifically on the social side only? So this is the, I guess, the more disturbing thing for me, the third sector that are working specifically for the socially, and they're working social work only. So if the government sector and the private sector, if they're just using their funds, right, to giving back the society at their own side, so do we need the third sector?
Well, from the governance perspective, these are actors in the economy and the delivery of services. So we need the third sector, the civil society. But in recent years, we're trying to redefine its role in the society. It's really more of bringing them back to the discourse of governance, because at some point, civil societies have been engaged in a lot of activities, watchdog, alternative service provider, but they're also dependent on grants, right? And now grants funding institutions are also already, limited. They're actually no longer, as we all know, they are going down in terms of providing grants to NGOs, civil society. There is now this reconceptualization for the civil society to continue to be part of this whole economy as service provider, but they are no longer dependent on grants. They continue to be active by making them earning, not really earning, actually we call it surplus, generating revenue through economic activities, entrepreneurial activities, so that they could finance their operations and they could continue to grow. this is why there's this need to, there's this call for expanding this particular third sector.
Social sector.
The third sector, the civil society in general. So it's really bringing them back, because in some countries, civil societies, organizations have lost their some kind of accountability, etc., etc. But with the emergence of social enterprises as a phenomenon, I think they could be, again, be built into the whole spectrum, the dynamics of the